The Jeff Dwoskin Show presents Crossing the Streams with host Jeff Dwoskin, Bob Phillips, Ron Lippett, Howard Rosner, Sal D'Amelio, and Zach Wiseman, and today's special guest. Thank you for joining us as we talk about what we are streaming. Right here on Crossing the Streams.
Well, hello. I don't know if you know this, but I'm Mick Manhattan, and I'm here to tell you guys about our sponsor, and that is Manscaped. That's right. Until May 14th, we were running a deal. If you head over to Manscaped, you can pick up any one of their products, like these two fantastic products right here. This is the Lawnmower 3.0. They also have the 4.0 available, and this is the Weed Whacker. Takes care of things real nice. Yeah, you hear that hair going away? Oh, yeah. It feels fantastic. So, you can go pick up any one of their devices. I also got their little toolkit with a great, probably the best nail clipper I've ever had in my life. And, file, scissors, the whole nine, and tons of other stuff. So go over to manscaped.com. Use promo code SNOBS, SNOBS, and you get 20% off and free shipping on your order until May 14th. So go ahead. We need to pay the bills. Help us out. Go order something and feel great and thank us later. Remember, they're saving our balls and they can save yours too. All right, everybody, in just a few seconds, we'll be getting started with our show. And we have a very special guest, Frank Sabatella, tonight. So we will talk to you guys in just a few moments.
Oh, my God. They found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
Run for it, Marty! Who? Who do you think? The Libyans!
Oh, 2 out of 3 ain't bad dancing. What?
2 out of 3?
Yeah, well, 2 of us were dancing. The other one was just standing there looking all sexy.
So,
with
guys,
his Manscaped beard and mustache.
I did mine too. It's fantastic. But I was unpacking, and look what I found in my boxes.
Oh.
Sidekicks on VHS.
Casey is running a little bit behind. Oh my God, Sidekicks. I haven't seen. Well, I've seen that movie fairly recently. My kid likes it, but I haven't seen a VHS of that in forever. But we have a very special show tonight. Is BTB Podcast. We have the video store crew as always. We're down 2 tonight. Casey and Lenny could not be here, but we are throwing in a spectacular guest. He was the director of one of my favorite horror movies of last year. Oh God. Of course, you have nunchucks that are glass. He was director of one of my favorite Stop it! I'm trying to do the intro. The Shed. The Shed is a fantastic vampire film. If you haven't checked it out already, it is available on VOD, and it is also available on Shudder if you have that service, which if you're a horror fan, you should. We're going to talk some horror topics tonight. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Mr. Frank Sabatella. Frank, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for coming back on the show, brother.
My pleasure. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. As you know, it's one of my favorite films of last year, The Shed. You made a fantastic movie. But for everybody watching right now and listening in the future, can you tell us a little bit about The Shed?
Sure. Let's see. I haven't talked about it in a while, so I got to remember what it's about. No, I'm just kidding. Shed is it's a vampire horror film, but it's probably not what you would typically expect from a vampire movie. It's a little more character driven, I guess you could say, and it revolves around it's kind of like a dark teenage drama with some vampire and horror elements mixed in. And it's basically about a juvenile delinquent that ends up trapping a vampire inside the tool shed in his backyard, and horrible things pursue from that point on.
I've got a question for you on that one, because when I initially watched The Shed, I didn't get that he was a troubled teenager. He got into some interesting issues, but I wouldn't have called him a troublemaker. Well, was that supposed to be in the movie?
That's very forgiving of you, I think, of his character. Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't think we really spelled out, hey, troubled youth here. But I think if you look at the nature of Stan's character and just the situation he's in, and he's sort of fighting in school, and he's ditching school, and he's got the sheriff already knows who he is, I think those are good indications that he's got some issues.
Okay.
Yeah. I picked up, just to put Gerard down a little bit, I definitely picked up him being troubled youth. But I picked up more misunderstood youth.
Yes.
Like, these are the people who he hangs out with, his backstory, his family life, everything. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So
sure.
I picked that up as like, he's a good kid that just kind of maybe fell in with the wrong crowd,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could say, he's obviously not the worst example of a kid, but just effectively he's that sort of latchkey kid that's, left without guidance and is just kind of out there doing their own thing. And I think when you're a teenager and you don't have that sort of nurturing guidance, you tend to be a troublemaker. I mean, he's underage drinking, they're drinking in the, in the sump where they hang out, and this, that, and the other thing. So, he's obviously not, what's the word? He's not really like a role model.
He's not a goody two shoes, but he's not a bad kid either.
Right. He tries to be a good person throughout the film. He's making the right decisions. They all just give him the wrong results, which just makes everything worse and worse.
Yeah, in our interview, you said that, and it really hit home for me too. Having watched it and loving it on the first view and subsequently since. I like how you said that. Like, he's so intent on making the right choices, but everything keeps falling apart on him. And the way you talked about the film, The Shed being a metaphor for like him trying to keep in all of these things, all of his demons and such, and the whole time being a metaphor for that. And then finally, when it unleashes, it's just so overwhelming.
Right.
That's one of the big reasons I love the film. And you did such a fantastic job shooting it too. Like, we talked about that a little too. Just a truly, just a beautiful look to it. But you're a big horror guy.
To my cinematographer, Matthias Schubert, he's amazing, and me and him were just totally in sync, and he brought so much of the visual aesthetic to the film as well. So I don't want to take all the credit.
No, take the credit. It's worth it.
It's like 50% me, 20% him. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it.
So, Nick, I don't think we had originally talked about this one, but this was probably one of the horror films that I actually like.
Yeah, you Gerard, you go ahead and tell your stance on horror films.
So, in my opinion, horror movies are the worst genre of all film to do.
I didn't know I was going to be attacked here. Thanks.
No. You got backup. You have backup 100%.
Who invited this guy?
I will happily do this all day long. No problem.
No, go on.
It's and my reason behind that statement is too often I hate when directors and cinematographers focus on scaring me, the audience, instead of scaring the characters. Whereas in The Shed, everything that happened directly reflected on the characters.
Cool.
And I think that's why I really like that movie.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I think that's actually a really good point. I've never really heard it put that way, that they focus on scaring the audience and not the characters. Though, would you think that if the character is scared, you as an audience member are scared?
Yes. Yes. So, like, for me,
you'd be scared without a character being scared?
I am not scared if the character is not scared, because I am invested in the story, not the visuals.
Well, yeah, you're crazy because I'm invested in both.
But then you say that, and then we talk about Transformers, and you can't see anything. It's visually stunning, but it's just a mess.
Yeah, but I go to horror movies. When I go to horror movies, it's something to open up something like almost, I don't want to say animalistic, but like something like it opens up this fear, that fear in me. And that's why I go to that. Just like if I go to a good drama to like pull at the heartstrings or comedy to make me laugh. Transformers is literally, if I'm going to that, it's to watch two robots fight.
Transformers is like junk food, basically, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't go to Transformers, so I mean, I really can't like jump in with you on that. But horror to me is still one of those. I love going to the movie theater, but sometimes, especially with prices, you have to decide what you're going to see. And I usually won't go see like a comedy or something that I can just watch at home comfortably. But horror is still one of those ones that holds on. And not only will I go see new horror in the theater, I want to see old horror in the theater.
Yeah.
Other genres, I don't find that.
I'm the opposite. I have to watch old and new horror at home so I can actually try and scare myself. Otherwise, I end up laughing through the whole thing at how original some of the characters have to be at the new deaths.
I think there's something to be said. I love watching old horror movies in a theater. A horror movie I've seen a million times, in a theater a million times, at home a million times. There's something about seeing a movie like Sleepaway Camp, which is one of my favorite slasher movies ever. Seeing it with an audience is just amazing because I guess to your point, Chad, Sleepaway Camp is not a scary movie. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. I know Mick has seen it. And, it's not a scary movie, but it's a horror movie. It's fun. It's funny. It's kind of bad, which makes it good. And when you see that with an audience that also appreciates that, there's always this sort of like bond, I guess, in the audience. Like everybody laughs at the same point, screams at the same point, yells at the same point. Usually when you're seeing Sleepaway Camp or a film like that, the film print itself is really beat up. It looks like crap, which like for some weird reason adds to the enjoyment of it. I know it doesn't make sense, but there's just something about that is really cool and enjoyable to me, and I think a lot of other horror fans as well. But I could also see your point why you want to stay home and watch a horror movie, turn off your lights, and like zone right in. But I think in the landscape of horror, there's such a spectrum of these types of movies where some horror movies are legitimately scary, where you're like, fuck, I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. Some of them are like just great storytelling and great scares and moments and drama, and that's great too. And some of them are ridiculous, but we still love them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just made me want to go watch Sleepaway Camp at either a drive-in or a movie theater because I love that franchise.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And that's one of the franchises I argue with a lot of people about. I like the second and third one more.
I love the second
more than the first one.
It just, as campy as the first one is, and I'm not taking anything away from it, but the second one and the third one just touched down on a whole new level of like 80s camp.
They doubled down.
That just,
you know what I think the difference is? I think when you watch the first Sleepaway Camp, at least for me, it feels so like real, genuine 80s. Like it's like it feels like how like my life actually was. Like the campers are wearing clothes that I had at the time. Like I had some of those T-shirts and like, you know, the video games that they're playing. But then when you watch the sequels, it's a little more hyper real. So, you know, they're in more like wardrobe and stylized. Like they're kind of pushing that 80s aspect of it. Where I think with the first one, there's a little bit more authenticity to 80s in a sense, if I'm making sense. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly.
no, that actually absolutely makes sense because they did it with the Friday 13th films too, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, definitely. I see your point to that. What do you think? I kind of want to talk about stylized films and such. You know, and like what? First off, before we go there, like the type of films I'm talking about are like the Deep Red or Suspiria, the one that really come in and it you know exactly where it's from when you see it.
The Italian films.
Oh yeah, those giallos are amazing, man.
Yeah.
For you, what are some stylized films that like inspire you when you're filmmaking?
It's funny. Somebody was asking me about inspiration recently. So I think there's two types of sort of inspire and influence. I think there's what consciously inspires you and influences you, and then there's the subconscious stuff that you don't even realize you're being influenced by, and then it turns up in your movie, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that. I didn't even know I did that. I'm totally inspired by the style and look of a lot of the Italian movies you were just talking about. And that is not always ever present in my films, but I do like using interesting color palettes and stuff like that. I don't go for the ultra bright Technicolor aspect of like Suspiria or even Deep Red, but I like things to be colorful and contrasty. I like a lot of things to be backlit. I like a lot of lens flare getting in. Anything that's going to create color and movement, I really enjoy. And I think a lot of that comes, in my opinion, from some of the giallo stuff and some of the more 70s style of filmmaking. I always cite Brian De Palma as an influence of mine, though I don't actually know that my films have a De Palma sense to them, but I just love some of his directing style so much that I think I just want it to be that way. But as far as like a subconscious influence, something I realized recently, my first film, Blood Night, I don't know if you guys have seen it. Jared would probably hate it. It's just like a straight like blood and guts slasher film. There's no drama to it. It's just like all out balls to the wall, like blood and guts and sex, right? Which is what it was meant to be. I wanted it to be like a really trashy slasher, and I think I succeeded. Whether it's good or not, that's another story. However, this past October, I hadn't seen probably in like 30 years. There was a made-for-TV movie called The Midnight Hour. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah. Wasn't
1985? It was made
LeVar
for like
Burton was in that, wasn't he?
On Halloween night.
Is that where they raised the witches? Is that where they raised the witches? And like LeVar Burton was in it. The dude from Penhall from Showing You in Jump Street.
Yeah,
I just watched it recently.
And you know what's his name? Kurtwood Smith is the town police officer.
Yep.
But so I hadn't seen that movie since 1985. I pretty much forgot it existed. And a buddy of mine this past October was like, "Oh, you got to watch The Midnight Hour." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds familiar. I think I've seen it. I'll check it out." As I was watching it, I'm watching the cemetery scene. I was like, "Holy shit! This is almost like identical to my cemetery scene in Blood Night." And I hadn't seen the movie since I was probably 9 years old. But there it was. It was like undeniable the way they like walked up to the grave. And, there was like spray paint on the grave. And I was like, Jesus, I'm like that just got in there subconsciously. And I had no clue. So I think the more interesting influence is the influence you don't know about because it's coming from somewhere deeper. And like I said, I'd love to sit around and be like, oh, I'm influenced by De Palma. I'm influenced by Spielberg. And I know the techniques that I like to borrow from those guys, but I don't know if that's necessarily obviously reflected in my work.
Yeah, because in my opinion, there's no wrong answer there because, I mean, everything you're saying, like even picking something like Midnight Hour, which is a really fun movie, people should watch.
Awesome. It's so cool.
And having watched it again recently, and I do remember it as a kid because it's one of those things like you just revisit and you're like, oh, I remember exactly when I watched this.
I didn't even remember it. I just knew I watched it, and I was like, I don't know, I don't remember.
It's so odd, but it's just one of those films that it's like anything taken from anything that really works, and that has a great atmospheric tone to it. And I see what you're saying there, especially. In a few of your films that I've watched, like I can see that, like where something might creep up. You just think about, even if it's just that, like Thriller comes to mind in its vision.
Totally.
How it was. That cemetery, tell me that cemetery wasn't the coolest looking cemetery.
Totally.
Until like Return of the Living Dead.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's what's so great about that particular movie, Midnight Hours. Like for me, it's such a pure Halloween movie. You know what I mean? Like it's Halloween night. Every possible ghost is like rising from the graveyard. The witches, the vampires, like the town is turning into beasts, and it's all happening on Halloween. And it's just good, campy fun, you know?
Yeah. And I like that too, because that's another one I kind of want to talk about. Like when we talk about stylized, we can almost talk about those campy films, especially from the early 80s, as their own style.
Yeah.
Like, because people were copying that style for a while.
For sure.
And, for you, like, I mean, you say Sleepaway Camp, that film comes with so many, such a connotation of, controversy and such, but, when you look back at it, but it's still like, it's one of those films that fits right perfectly in there in the pantheon of like those sleepaway camp movies.
Totally.
So for you, like, what are some of your favorite campy type movies from back then besides Sleepaway Camp?
Oh man, so many. I love Chud. I love.
After you're done, I got a good one for you on that.
The early Friday. I mean, pretty much all the Friday the 13th. Throw a dart at any slasher, any of the slasher movies from like the early 80s, and like I'm all in. You know what I mean? The Elm Streets are great. Even some of the weirder shit like Basket Case and like I don't know, anything that was just cool and weird and had monsters. I'm totally into it. Fright Night, anything.
I love Fright Night.
I love Fright Night. I just saw
I will tell you, Chud. You saying Chud, it reminds me that those New York in like the late 70s through the 80s had the best atmosphere in movies.
Totally.
And especially in horror movies. I don't know. And I lived right there growing up then. And I'm like, yeah, it was kind of like this, but it wasn't exactly like this. This had all of the.
It was sleazy and criminal in the late 70s, early 80s, but the horror movies like took that to like the 10th power,
Oh, yeah. I remember I was watching with my kid, Jason Takes Manhattan, and just like the barrel of toxic waste with the rat like floating around in it, and he's just like, "Is that what New York was like?" I'm like,
New York, just barrels of toxic waste out on the street corners,
Yeah, we had to fight with. I was from Jersey, so we had to fight with people all the time, saying, "No, I mean it does happen, but not really. Don't believe it."
Oh, you know what I got to mention? You know what I have to mention for some early '80s camp that you have to give credit to the Trauma films. You got to go with Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High. I mean, those are on a different level of camp and trash, but so great.
I'll tell you, Lloyd turned such a page, man. Because if you look back at his 70s movies and you're like, these are ultra violent, insane movies like Blood-Sucking Freaks and others at that time, Mother's Day, things like that.
Yeah.
And then you get to the 80s, and there still are ultra violent, and there still are crazy, but like he added like a weird whimsy to it,
like a wackiness to it, like a weird, like a demented Americana suburban aspect.
I just keep going back to like Trauma War. You think about that soundtrack, and I'm just like, geez,
that's a weird one, yeah.
Well, how about you guys? Let's go around the panel a little bit. Like Jason, what are some horror movies for you that like stand out that, for you that are just like, this is it. This is where this is my sweet spot.
Silent Night, Deadly Night is one.
Hell yeah.
I loved the first one. I was disappointed when I watched the second one.
You got to turn up a little bit, pal. You're low.
Oh.
Or speak into your microphone.
I said, there you go.
You got to speak up for the old people in the back.
Silent Hill Deadly Night's one that I really, really like. The Puppet Master franchise was one that I grew up watching. Those were campy fun, too.
Oh, my God. What's his name?
Charles Band.
Charles Band.
Ghoulies, those are great ones, too, the first two.
Yes. And Ghoulies go to college, and it just gets crazier and crazier from there.
I never saw Ghoulies go to college. I only recently found out it existed.
I feel like you need to sit down and watch them. They're so weird. And Charles Band, man, he first of all, he made just such the living off of like puppets, more so than I think Jim Henson's company ever could. We talk about Puppet Master. I'm not such a huge fan of the first one, but man, where he went with the rest of them, you're just kind of like, Jesus.
Was Troll a Charles Band movie also?
He acquired distribution rights eventually because it's on all the Full Moon stuff, but I don't think it wasn't original. I don't think he put it out initially.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess not.
But those are great. I used to watch Troll 1 and 2 when I was younger.
Yeah. Troll 2, that's another one that's like it's so bad that you love it, you know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because the first movie was John Carl Buechler directed it.
Right.
He went on to the Friday 13th series.
Yeah.
Talented guy, man. He's a talented director. But
I don't know if he was an effects artist as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's how he started out. And he probably started with Full Moon. But like you were mentioning Puppet Master, and it kind of got me thinking a little bit. Like, what for you? Like, why did those stand out over other horror movies? Because a lot of people will look at just the trailers and be like, "This is insane. I'm not watching this."
When my dad and I would go to the video store, there was always a new Puppet Master on the shelf. I don't know. It just like the box art got me. I apologize to my dad many, many times for making him watch 9 of these. But every time I went, there was a new one. I didn't understand back then that more meant less quality, but I freaking dug them all. I have not been able to watch past 2 since I've grown up, but I did like the remake.
They made 10 of them. These must be great.
Yeah. Drew, what about you, man?
One was pretty good.
You had some.
For favorite campy horror movie,
anything.
Probably Nightmare on Elm Street is probably my favorite slasher of all time. Right behind that is Gremlins and Child's Play.
Nice.
Yeah, you really don't like horror movies.
I consider Gremlins a Christmas movie.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, Christmas horror. Just like Santa's Sleigh and
There's monsters.
The Christmas Horror Story.
Okay, fine.
You can. I think they because it's so good. I think it's been adopted by the horror genre as almost like it's a family horror movie. But if you go back and watch that first one, you're like, some dark shit.
Well,
that's absolutely a terrifying movie.
A lot of the stuff in the first Gremlins, I don't think would fly today. I mean, there's a pretty violent stabbing of a gremlin with a kitchen knife. There's a beheading. I mean, the Gremlins.
Isn't one of them stuffed into a blender?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but not even just talking about them, like talking about like what they do
exploding
to the
microwave gremlin.
Yeah,
I would say I'd put it in horror for sure, but it's definitely like not the second one. The second one is
no. The second one's absolutely amazing as a comedy, but the first one was absolutely terrifying.
Amazing.
The second one was a big commercial.
Just for the simple fact that they had a female gremlin with tits this huge that tried to make out with absolutely everybody.
Oh, God.
Did that turn you on?
Yeah, buddy. You know it.
Now you got see. That's how you make it work, Frank. In your next film, you got to put a gremlin with big tits, just trying to make out with everybody. Rod's on point.
That'll be in.
So
yes,
one thing I wanted to kind of delve into as well is like the horror community. So recently, like we've been seeing a lot of things with the horror community, a lot of sexism, stuff like that. And I don't want to get too like into all that. I wanted to get more into how do we feel about the horror community now with such a voice of the internet versus what the horror community was back in a day. I mean, I remember being a horror fan back in like the 80s, 90s, and you almost were thought of as a Satanist by everybody.
It was a lonely pursuit.
And now if you think about movies and fans in general, you know, of course you have your comic book fans, which were always there, but now it's like a little more out in the open because of movies that exist. Mm-hmm. But like the horror fans, I would almost say that's like the strongest base.
Seems like it, yeah.
So I tend to agree with that statement.
I just said it.
Well, so
first time.
as the strongest, because right behind your horror movie fans or your comic movie fans, and they will defend if you get them two in a room together to argue. Horror movie fans are going to out argue comic fans.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think in general, like even because of how horror fans were treated back in the day. Frank, let me know what you think on this. It's like being a horror fan and growing up then, and because you were kind of looked down on for being a horror fan, it's almost like that's why it's so strong now. Like they're not going to let anybody from an outside hurt them. I
think I think like when I was a kid and a teenager, like you were like the weird horror kid. Like I had a couple of weird horror friends with me. Fortunately, there were a couple of dudes that were my good buddies that I'm still great friends with now. That we would just basically live for horror movies. I think with the advent of social media, that created connectivity, obviously, so everybody can just be like, "Oh my God, you've seen Sleepaway Camp 3 also? Great." You know what I mean? Where a lot of that obscure stuff, it was rare to find somebody that was like into those things. I think it's like a double-edged sword because I think with I'm not that huge of a fan of social media in general. I think it tends to create mediocrity. I think that stuff just becomes very redundant. I mean, you see this even with a lot of the like horror T-shirt companies. Every T-shirt company has like 5 million like Halloween 4 shirts, or like they're all like regurgitating the same licenses over and over and over again. It's like, okay, do I need another Freddy Krueger T-shirt? Do I need another Michael Myers T-shirt, etc.? So I think that in a weird way, it has actually taken originality out of the equation. Because you have this crowd of horror fans, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but I think once something becomes mainstream, I think a bulk of the mass of internet horror fans are more mainstream, which is totally cool. They probably don't even know. Not everyone. I mean, of course, there's all the true believers out there, but there's such a swath of like fans out there that don't really know the deep cuts. They may not know Chud, or Chud's pretty popular, but so that's why you just start seeing like the same stuff coming out over and over again, the same types of T-shirts or the same stickers or the same movies are being redone or this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's cool, but I think what happens is originality sort of gets lost in the mediocrity, because then when you bring out an original idea that like the base, like the weirdo horror fans that were isolated and in their small communities in the 80s might be like, oh my God, this is awesome, but then the mainstreamers may not even get exposed to it. You know what I mean? And even if they are, they may not be into it because it's not the horror that they sort of know or came up on. So I think originality might get passed over. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this on two folds, because I like that point, but I'm also curious if you believe that because of the horror movie genre's infancy in the 80s, 70s, and so on, that those people are now, because they're now adults and they can influence the industry, that they're just rehashing their old childhoods.
That's actually, yeah,
it's a great point. I think to some extent, yes, and I think to some extent, no. I mean, we started this conversation talking about influence, and I can only speak for myself. I, being a child of those movies, I'm a product of those late 70s, early 80s films. Those are the first horror movies I was, connected to. So you have that emotional connection. And what I try to do with my films is I want to bring some of that into my work while creating something new, or hopefully something new. I want to just be, I'm the sum of my influences, right? That's what they say. You're the sum of your influences. So I take on a great deal of influence. I have all those influences. I take on new influence, and I'm influenced by so much stuff, even out of the genre. And I want to, like, that all gets like chewed up in my head and spit out. And hopefully something new comes out that people still connect to, that they connect to the 70s and 80s aspect of it, and they connect to the newness of it. That's just me. I think when now that horror's become mainstream, things can become formulaic and trendy, and there's always trends that happen. You know, you can go to any decade. Obviously, the slasher trend in the 80s. Then the 90s was like, I don't know, studio slashers, which I don't happen to care for. Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and dare I say Scream. I'm not even really a fan of that series. But then you get into like the early 2000s, and we started seeing great movies again, like Saw and like Cabin Fever and like House of a Thousand Corpses, where you're starting to have this new type of horror that connects to something old but has some diversity and newness to it. And then the late 2000s, all that shit blew up again. Like 2010, horror like went mainstream, and that's when it just was like, holy shit, there's like actual horror TV shows on regular TV on prime time. So it started becoming really accessible, which is amazing. Like, people that didn't even know they liked horror are like obsessed with Walking Dead and stuff like that. So it's all great. I think as a creator myself, I am very weary, or I'm careful to not. The scariest thing for me is being mediocre. That's the last thing I would want. Like, I shudder at the thought of someone being like, "Oh, he's mediocre. His films are mediocre." And some people might say that. They might look at my body of work and be like, "Oh, it's just he just did a slasher film," or "Oh, okay, big deal, it's a vampire film," or his Halloween films are just drawing on these old styles of film. But I do that to exercise my own style, exercise my influence, and hopefully, like I said, take those influences and do something new with them that I feel good about. Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to for me. I want to feel good about the work I'm creating and not feel like I'm copying something, but still feel like it's coming from somewhere and something that I love.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's great.
Which kind of leads me into my second topic, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned House of a Thousand Corpses, and because I love Rob Zombie's take on a lot of the horror movie classics, specifically for when he redid
Halloween.
No, not Halloween. Was he an executive producer on the Friday the 13th?
No,
Michael Bay.
That was Michael Bay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But what my question was, because I really love Rob Zombie's work in general. But what question was, in terms of getting horror movie tropes that are genuinely scary, like, say, for instance, a movie like Jeepers Creepers, where you have a completely original idea. The antagonist is essentially the scariest thing that you've seen, bar none, for ages. But then you get to movie 2, and then the director or the studio or whatever just completely mishandles what made the character scary in the first place and changes the entire trajectory of the film going forward. How would you?
That's where I got to disagree with you, because I like the second one. I think I kind of like the second one more than the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
I like them both.
Actually, I like the second one better than the first one also, but they're not like go-to films for me. I think they're cool. I'm glad I saw them, but I don't revisit them frequently. But to answer your question, regardless of which film I like better, I think a couple things happen. I think, one, nobody knows really what's going to make a good movie. There's no like, okay, here's how we're going to make a hit. Like, nobody knew Nightmare on Elm Street was going to be a hit. Nobody knew Halloween was going to be a hit. Nobody knew Friday. Like, they just happened, right? So something amazing happens, and you're like, oh, fuck, this is amazing. How do we do it again? I don't know. We don't know how we did it the first time. Well, let's try, you know? And I think that's what happens, you know? Then like, where you have the first film, you know, I don't know to what extent the director or the screenwriter might have been like, well, let's do this. And then when it works, you know, everybody kind of wants to take credit in a sense. So there's an expression, I think John F. Kennedy said it. What is it? Wait. Victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan, right? So what that means, what I take it to mean, is that when something is successful, everybody wants to be like, oh, well, it's because I'm a great producer, or I'm a great writer, I'm a great director, I'm a great cinematographer. So everybody in there is like, it's a victory because of me, so that victory has 1,000 fathers, right? When something's a failure, everybody's like, the script sucked, the producer sucked, the studio sucked. Like, nobody wants to own that, right? So when you have that hit and you have all these fathers, so to speak, now want to do it again, they're not even quite sure what made it great the first time. Nobody is. It's this sort of chemistry, I think, that just happens, and you can't necessarily recreate it. Some movies are lucky. Like, let's just take Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. Most people agree the first one is amazing. It's incredible. We had never seen anything like that before. We never saw a slasher that talked. We never saw a slasher not wearing a mask. He had such a cool backstory. He's coming to you with your dream. It was just completely unique and original. We were like, holy shit. Then they made a sequel, part 2. Now, we love part 2, most of us, but it's bizarre. And it's clearly not as good as the second one. But then they made part 3, which is amazing, right? Yeah. So, you don't necessarily know. But by that point, everybody loved Freddy Krueger so much, you almost didn't even have to make a good movie. You just had to have Freddy Krueger in it, and it was going to be a hit. So,
true.
Until you got to Freddy's Dead.
but they redeemed Freddy's Dead with New Nightmare. New Nightmare is my favorite in the franchise.
See, I'm not a fan of New Nightmare.
Really?
And I'm not really a fan of Freddy's Dead, but I like certain elements of it.
Freddy's Dead, like when we were talking about like something that makes you laugh earlier, that's what Freddy's Dead was.
Yeah, it's a Looney Tunes cartoon.
You go into that and it's like you are not expecting to be scared of this movie. It's just
I mean, by part 5, you're like, this is not going to be scary. Freddy's cracking jokes. He's a wise ass, and you're just looking for cool deaths. So, I guess to put that in a nutshell, I think it's just a matter of you don't know what made it successful in the first place necessarily with a horror movie. So when it is a success and everybody's like, oh my God, let's do part 2, we'll make even more money. Yeah, you probably have a lot more voices coming in. And a lot of those movies, especially on the Indian, you're a first-time director. So people didn't trust you to begin with. You're lucky that you got somebody to let you direct your freaking movie the way you wanted to. By part 2, now, you might be able to be like, hey, I'm the genius director that did part 1. But chances are, if a studio is coming along or bigger producers are coming along, they're going to want to put their influence because everybody thinks they know better than everybody.
I want to get the panel's take on this because I was always told Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was one of the greatest movies ever made. And I watched the first one and then I watched the second one without any context of knowing what I was getting into with the second one. What do you think of when they switch tones?
Second one's my favorite.
Is it?
It's so crazy and campy. Dennis Hopper is like insane and I love it. I just listen, I'm not taking away from the first one and what it was and what it did.
The 2 different universes, I feel.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I wish I'd been more prepared. Maybe I should watch it again and not expect to get the first movie's tone again. But yeah, I don't know.
The first movie is one of my absolute all-time favorites, and I love it so much in like every possible way. It's one of the few movies that I consider nearly perfect. The only other film that I could think of off the top of my head that I would say is nearly perfect would be The Lost Boys.
Great movie.
But the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre, though it has a lot of great stuff and it gave us Chop Top and all that stuff, I don't like it as much as the first one. The first one to me, and maybe it goes back more to what Jared was saying earlier, I was more scared with the first one. It's raw, it's gritty, it's intense. The second one is cool. The first one is more befitting of the mid-70s, and the second one is more befitting of the mid-80s. I mean, that's how I would look at it. It's a little more slapstick. It's off the wall, like you said, and it's got crazy kills and just all sorts of madness. But if I could only watch one Texas Chainsaw for the rest of my life, it would be the first one.
Not Next Generation with Matthew McConaughey?
That one is my second favorite. No, I'm just kidding. That one's a weird one too. But so is Part 3. Part 3 is a weird one also. Yeah. Leatherface,
Leatherface was crazy. But they went crazy with all of them. I think the reason that the second one, it just sticks with me. Again, the first one is a better movie. I'll never take it. If I'm sitting there and I'm talking to, film fans and horror fans and such, I'm not saying, hey, second Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my favorite, so it's obviously the best. Like, no, I get it. I get why the first one is great. But the second one, it's the same reason I want to watch, during Fear Fest and all that stuff. All the crazy. I'll even watch Halloween 4 and 5. And let's face facts. Do we really want to watch those? No, but I will because it's still Michael Myers killing people.
Yeah. And Michael Myers is like, I may have mentioned this to you the first time we interviewed Mick. Michael Myers is my least favorite slasher killer. I get so much blowback for that. But I still watch Halloween 4, during Fear Fest. I'm like, nice, Halloween 4. Like, it just feels comforting to know that it's there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that comes from, like, with this show is the premise of this show even, the video store. Video store made you love these movies because a lot of these are the ones that people found and then went back and found the originals.
Right.
And I know for me, like Michael Myers, he's not my favorite slasher, but going to see the first one, going back again to seeing it on the big screen and seeing all of the things John Carpenter did in that movie and where he was in the background here and there. And like the entire time he's lurking and things you didn't see, like watching it on VHS, you're like, damn. This guy had a plan, man.
I think the first one is my favorite one of the Michael Myers films. I mean, if you ask me what my favorite Halloween is, I'm going to say Halloween 3, not because I'm a poser and that's trendy now, but I always loved Halloween 3 more than the Michael Myers storyline. I'm into like weird shit, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, so when something's weird, like, and it's more colorful, it's more enticing to me. And I love that score so much. Not that the Halloween score is not iconic, but there's just something so cool about Season of the Witch. It just has, I don't know, it's bizarre.
Silver Shamrock. That whole Silver Shamrock song is fantastic. I love Halloween 3 as well. I've met some of the cast, and I always tell them I like the Michael Myers movies. But I'm like, Halloween 3 is my favorite because it's out of nowhere. Maybe why Mick likes 2 so much, but like 3 is completely out of nowhere, and it's completely different. I don't
consider it a Halloween movie, really. It's its own thing. It's really its own animal.
It's a shame they put it in the Halloween series because I would have loved to see a sequel to that.
My big thing with Halloween 3 is that I kind of get mad at when I watch it. As like, this is what it could have been if they had just listened to John Carpenter.
Like a continued anthology?
Yeah.
That would have been amazing. I agree.
And not go with the second one. And I get why they did. Like you said, if it works, they're trying to keep doing the same thing. But it's weird because I love 3 so much. I almost wish they would take the Halloween off of it.
Just call it Season of the Witch.
Yeah, and just let it be its own thing because Atkins is great in that movie.
I love Tom Atkins.
Oh, he's fantastic. And just watching that movie, you're like, yeah, okay, it doesn't mix with Halloween, but that should not take away from what this movie is.
But then, what's funny is that same thing with Studio Influence. They were just like, all right, fuck that. We need to bring back Michael Myers. And that's how we got Halloween 4 and 5 and 6 and so on.
Yeah, unfortunately. I will say, to kind of go into the franchises and how big they were, especially in the 80s and the 90s, and not to say they don't exist in more recent years, but not as much as back then, is building these huge franchises and having sequel after sequel after sequel. And Gerard, I know you are more of a action fan, which fits right in with this with the franchises, especially the martial arts movies. So for you guys, like, is that something that studios should be opening to revisiting?
Yes. They're cheap.
Absolutely.
And I enjoy every single Friday the 13th movie on some level.
That's fair.
To that point, but also like there's certain movies that I want more story out of those. To Frank's point, House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects. I want to know more about Captain Sid and his family. That's amazing to me.
Yeah. And
I think that's what Devil's Rejects kind of did, was it gave you more of the family dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And improved upon it, in my opinion. I mean, I like House of a Thousand Corpses, but making that what it was.
Devil's Rejects is the superior film.
Oh, yeah. And you can tell that. You can even tell. Like, have you guys seen 3 from Hell yet?
Unfortunately.
No. Yeah. But you can tell, like, he was directly trying to make, basically the Devil's Rejects all over again. And
Wait, is that still in the same franchise? I have something new to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the third film.
What I believe he was doing with what he started doing with Devil's Rejects and tried to continue with Three from Hell. I'm not speaking for Rob Zombie. This is merely my opinion. Devil's Rejects started really turning them into the Manson family and bringing in those Manson vibes. And if you've ever seen have you seen the documentary, the like quasi documentary Helter Skelter?
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch that, you'll see a bunch of stuff in there that you're like, oh my God, that's like a shot from Devil's Rejects. And then I think what he tried to do with Three from Hell was make it his own Helter Skelter, where it was like sort of documentary-ish, sort of mixed with movie, with real life. And it just, unfortunately, I don't think it worked. I understood what he was trying to do. It just didn't seem to work for some reason. I don't know why it didn't connect. Visually, it was stunning. Stylistically, it looked really cool. But it just was not good for some reason.
Did anybody see Cabin in the Woods, the remake?
Oh, no, wait.
Say what?
Eli Roth remade the original Cabin in the Woods. He remade his own film.
No, Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever, sorry. Did anybody see the remake? How was that? Like, experiment?
I didn't see the remake.
It was wasn't it supposed to be like a frame for frame? Was that the one that was... I know they did a remake of it, but it was like...
I don't know. I just know they brought back Eli Roth and the original team.
He produced, though. He didn't direct it. He
didn't direct it.
No, I think his name was just on it.
Okay. I
mean, listen, you go back and you got, Hitchcock was remaking his own movies. I don't care if people remake their movies or not. For me, though, you got to ask, like, is it worth it? Like, that original Cabin Fever movie was pretty good. So I don't care to see a remake of it. If I like the original, I'll just go back and watch the original. Right. And that's where I think it really comes down to me. And a lot of horror filmmakers today, again, like you said, it's got to be inspiration or it's got to be some kind of influence. But there's a lot of people who want to go back and like try and capture the magic this movie made them feel, rather than try and come up with something original.
Right. I think what I like to do, I want to recreate. I want to give somebody else the magic that I felt. So I want to take the feeling of the magic and I put that into my writing and my directing, and hopefully the audience gets it. You know what I mean? Some people don't, and that's cool. Because whatever. What I think, like, I like horror to be, even if horror is scary, I like it to be fun and enjoyable, and I like to connect to it. I like horror movies that I can watch over and over and over again. And there's a lot of these new horror movies. I was talking to my friend Britt, and she gave it a really great name. She called it mental health horror, talking about like all those really dark, grim horror movies, like I guess Hereditary and like The Witch and Lighthouse and those types of like very dark, grim, sad horror movies. And they're stylish, they're artistic, they're well directed, they're beautiful movies. I don't want to say I don't like them, but I don't want to watch them twice. That's for sure. You know what I mean?
True.
I watch it and I'm like, wow, that was an experience. I'm gonna go watch Sleepaway Camp again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think it's because it lacks heart.
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I don't even know if that's the right thing. I mean, I'm sure the filmmakers are passionate about them. It's just it's different. It's not giving me the feeling of escape, I guess. You know what I'm saying? When I watch any horror movie that I love, whether it's an old one or a new one, take like Drag Me to Hell, which is relatively new. I mean, what is that, like 10 years old by now? So I guess it's not that new, but let's call that new. Drag Me to Hell, I was like, this is amazing. I loved it. And I can watch Drag Me to Hell over and over again because it was still fun. It was entertaining. It didn't just scare me. It didn't just like toy with my emotions. I was engaged in the characters. I had fun. I don't know. It's a hard thing to put your finger on. I don't know if they don't have heart.
I think that's my issue for a lot of horror movies is when I am genuinely scared, I am emotionally drained. I'm so invested in those characters that I'm like, okay, I can't watch that again back to back. Like, it'll take me at least a year or so to get back to being in a mental state where I can watch that again.
Whereas you can take movies like Insidious, The Conjuring that are genuinely scary.
Yeah.
But you still want to watch them again. They still have in a weird way, they have a good vibe, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that was to your point earlier, Gerard. Like taking The Conjuring 2, and because I think it's more than 3 years old now, I can say this. That's my rule. If it's 3 years or more, I'm allowed to spoil it. I don't care.
That's fair.
When they're watching TV, the little girl is watching TV, and I think her brother is in a room or something, and like she kind of is like looking off, and you see like somebody like just sitting and like right beside the TV, and then he runs out at her. Like, a lot of people are just like, "Oh, what a jump scare," And I'm like, but that was
I love jump scares.
That was perfect. That was in my opinion, a perfect jump scare, and it was because they immediately cut to the little girl like jumping back. Like, to your point, it was scaring her. You are her in that point. It's not scaring the audience. So like movies like that like are so smart and well done. And to kind of gush over The Shed a little bit more.
Please do.
Absolutely. I love that movie.
Really good movie.
So
thank you.
How it starts out and like the whole premise of it, and then how it ends, and I'm not spoiling anything there. I want people to go watch it. But the final confrontation and how it's so much more open than the entirety of the movie, because it is The Shed. You almost, I don't want to say it changes subgenres in any way. Like it's still like all fits, but like it becomes a lot more in your face than the whole movie has been.
It really, as I was working through it, by the time I got to the third act, I just wanted like horror movie payoff. You know what I'm saying? Like, and in my mind, this is going to sound crazy. In my mind, I was like, I want my third act to be like the third act of Friday the 13th Part 4. That's what I was thinking when I was writing the final attic scene. I was like, it's not exact, but in my mind, I was like, this is Jason Voorhees fighting Tommy Jarvis and his sister. You know what I mean? Like, that was my thinking. And obviously, it's not the same. People might be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But in my mind, that's what I was doing. So I wanted to bring that to the vibe of like, now all of a sudden, now you got like axes swinging, and there's like people getting thrown, and there's knives, and there's blood. And it's like, the whole movie's not like that, really. But then once we got upstairs, and once I got into that end, I was just like, all right, I just want to be the horror movie guy that I know that I am and I want to be, and that's what I did. Some people like that, some people don't, but I love it. So that's what I wanted to do. That I wanted it to be a new tone because all the character drama as we're going into the third act, not to get screenplay dorky on everyone, but like as we were going into the third act, all the character drama was wrapped up. So what was there left for me to do? Let's have a good time. Let's have the classic, like, okay, now there's thunder and lightning and scary and there's, like, now it's like, to me, that's when it becomes a horror movie.
Yeah.
But prior to, it's like, prior to all that, it was like Permanent Record with a vampire, not Permanent Record. It was like River's Edge with a vampire. That's how I felt.
And, again, I want to tell everybody, because The Shed is available on VOD to rent, or it's available on Shudder, which is a great service if you don't have it, especially for such horror fans. So
also,
go check it
out. DVD. If you're physical media people,
yeah,
I'm so happy that our distributor, RJE, they still do physical media, and they didn't just do like a crappy DVD. It's a nice DVD. It's got a good, it's got an outer sleeve on it, and it's available on Blu-ray. So if people like physical media, I'm not saying I don't get paid if you buy DVDs. It has nothing to do with me anymore.
That's great.
If you still collect physical media, it's available. So
I'm going to post a link on that too, so people can go check it out and buy it. So in the descriptions it will be, so make sure you check that out. Before we start wrapping things up though, Frank, what are some horror movies that are sort of recent that you recommend?
Recent that I recommend.
All for me, by the way.
What would I tell Jared to watch? Let's see. That's a tough question because I haven't been watching. Admittedly, I haven't been watching a lot of horror movies lately. I haven't been watching a lot of movies lately. I've been reading more. Let's see. What did I see lately that I really liked? Oh, I watched Fried Barry on Joe Bob the other night, which was like mind blowing. I was like, this is great. That was a good time. So I don't know Jared would enjoy that. So I don't know if I can recommend that in good conscience. Let's see. What have I seen recently that I like? I mean, I haven't seen a lot that I was just like, oh man, this is awesome. You're stumping me here, man. I got to think. Give me a minute to think. Let me circle
go
back.
for it. I want to say, Mike Courtney over in the show, boys. Thank you for watching, man, bro. I love physical media. Then go pick up a copy of The Shed. 100%. I want a poster, and when I get that poster, I'm sending it to you, Frank, and I want it signed.
Oh, done deal, man.
Because it's such a cool poster.
You know what? I have a couple extra posters. I'll just send you one.
You're the man. Thank you,
send
sir.
You one. Just you have my email or instant message me your address, and I'll send you some goodies.
I appreciate it, man, and that's definitely going up on the wall. I'm getting rid of those bookshelves, so don't worry. And then I'm gonna have lots of wall space.
I'm not worried.
Shed, man, I can't gush over it enough. It was in my top 10 horror films of last year.
It's so cool. Now I feel like a dick that I can't think of a new horror movie that I watched recently.
All right, how about this? Let's open it up. Let's everybody give a recommendation that they have.
I can't even think of what I watched. That's the problem.
Give me an old one. Like you said, Midnight Hour. Now I've seen that one, but give me an old one that maybe is like off the beaten path. I can't find.
Like really old.
Sure.
Let's see. Really old, off the beaten path.
If you say Sleepaway Camp 3, I'm going to be mad.
No, I wouldn't say. How about Let's Scare Jessica to Death?
Oh my God, that's such a good. I knew you need to revisit that. I haven't seen that since I'm a teenager, and that was.
It's really slow, but there's just a weird, dreamy atmosphere to it that is really cool, and I like to throw that out as a bizarro.
That's a good one.
I know I watched some new stuff recently. What was like out on VOD recently on a few different? Didn't HBO Max have some horrors out recently?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I know I watched some stuff. I just can't think of anything. My short-term memory is shot. Like the whole pandemic is like a big blur to me right now.
I did watch a really messed up movie. I watched this newer. I got to talk to the lead actor in it too. It was really just it's dark. It's one of those mental health films you're talking about. It's The Dark and the Wicked. Oh,
I wanted to check that out. I heard it was really dark but really good.
Yeah, absolutely check it out. It is like it's very dark. It screws with you a little bit.
I watched something a couple weeks ago. I can't believe I can't think of it. It wasn't on Shudder. Maybe it was on Shudder. I don't really know, man. The only movie I've only been watching. If I'm watching movies, it's like Friday nights I watch Joe Bob. So whatever Joe Bob has been playing, I've been watching.
So crazy. He's been showing some great stuff too recently.
Yeah, for sure. He has to show The Shed. That's what we're waiting for.
Yes, absolutely. Can get you on there, man. 100%. Gerard, how about you, man? Give me a horror movie. I know you've been rewatching some.
Horror movie that's really good. Child's Play 2.
Child's Play 2. Wow, that's a crazy one, but I like it. I'll take it. How about you, Jason?
For the simple fact that I had my buddy a doll.
Oh, those things are horrifying.
And I have not seen him since, and I have been terrified ever since.
My cousin's dating Alex Vincent, who played Andy in Child's Play 1 and 2.
Really?
I think he's going to be in a new show, too.
Yeah, he is. But Freaky. I watched Freaky recently, and it's not one of those scary ones, but it's super campy, and it's a lot of fun. I didn't want to see it at first, and I saw the Rotten Tomatoes and all the reviews. I'm like, all right, I'll go check this out. It's Freaky Friday, essentially, with Vince Vaughn and a high school female, and they switch bodies. So Vince Vaughn is now playing a high school cheerleader. He's a serial killer. It's a lot of fun. It was great. It reminded me of those 80s.
I'm not
the Host was really good.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Host was good.
Host was good, yeah.
The Host. Yeah, that's one I watched when it came out. That was really good. And I know I watched another like bigger film. I'm looking at Google right now as like what were 2020 popular horror movies, seeing if any of them ring a bell. And I'm realizing how many movies I actually haven't seen.
Shudder has a movie about a pair of killer pants.
Was it good?
It was actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching it. I did not expect that.
I will say,
I have a question then, because I don't know where this actually falls, but there's 9 of them, and a lot of people die. But Sharknado, where would you throw that?
Penalty box.
It was time to go.
Listen, all of those movies,
sci-fi camp, you know.
Yeah. All those movies are just like, you got to be on the right day to want to watch something like that.
Yeah, they know what they are. That's the thing. They know,
They're going for all those things you say you hate about horror movies.
Exactly.
Like Courtney says, in the garbage, you throw them in the garbage.
Apparently there's a new one coming, Gerard.
Dude, the last one I saw was Sharknado in Space or Sharknado Through Time. I don't remember which one, but I was like, I'm done.
I think
they were one like every year. That's one of those franchises.
You've seen more Sharknadoes than I have.
You went right down the line with them, too.
You know, it's a random movie I really love. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people really love this, but Hellraiser 2, I only in the past few years realized how much I really love Hellraiser 2. It's an excellent movie.
It is.
Yeah. Hellraiser 2 is actually one of the ones that I think is better than the first one.
Yeah, I agree. And the first one's great, but Hellraiser 2 is just awesome.
Yeah, it opens it up a lot more. You get to see the hell world a lot more. I think it works better personally.
I agree. You got better monsters, and you get a little more out of the Cenobites.
Yeah.
So that's some good stuff.
I
saw a scary ghost movie recently, and I just can't think of what it is. Next time you have me on, if you ever have me on again, I'll be more prepared to talk about current movies.
I love it. And then we're going to go back, and you're going to come on, and we're going to be like, so tell us some old movies that you want.
I'm always prepared to talk about old movies. I'm like, I didn't do any prep, so you were just like, hey, we're going to talk about horror movies. I'm like, I can handle that without preparing in any way. And then you're like, name some new movies you saw. And I'm like, fuck.
I should have went with the old. I knew it. I will say one new movie I really enjoyed that's campy, fun, the whole 9 yards is Willy's Wonderland with Nick Cage.
Oh, cool.
That was a fun one. You could tell it was like a send up to the Evil Deads, things like that. So definitely enjoyed that one. But yeah, I want to say thank you, Frank, for being on the show tonight, man. We'll always have you back anytime.
My pleasure, man. You guys are always cool. I love talking to you, dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. You are knowledgeable and you're the man, and I love your movies. So
thanks.
Absolutely, we'll always keep pushing. But thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the button, and you of course can follow us on social media anywhere at The Scene Snob. And reach out, talk to us, let us know some stuff you'd like to see us talk about in the movie world. So until next time, I am Mick Manhattan, joined as always with Jason and Gerard and Frank Sabatella this week, and we love it. Go check out The Shed, which is available now. Buy it on physical media or check it out on VOD or Shudder. And until next time, take care, everybody.
All right.
And that's our show, everybody. Thanks for listening or watching, wherever you're checking it out. This show is brought to you by our sponsor, Manscaped. Go check them out. They are saving our balls, and they can save yours too, or somebody you care about. It's a pretty awesome device, so go check out what they got, the Lawnmower 3.0, the Weed Whacker, and more. It's a great gift for Father's Day, birthdays, weddings, anything. So yeah, head over there and use promo code SNOBS, SNOBS, and you'll get 20% off and free shipping. Also, we'd like to thank our super fan patrons. They are all Scene Snob family to us. They support us every month, and you can be one too. So head over to the Patreon channel, the Scene Snobs, and it's $5 a month, and you can join in with helping support us and get the free perks too. Also, you can follow us on social media. We are on everything at The Scene Snobs, so Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We are on Facebook, The Scene Snobs. Everywhere. We have fun stuff always going on, always have contests and stuff, so go follow us, check us out. You can go to our link tree by going to thescenesnobs.com. There's our link tree, there's our Patreon, there is all of our shows and the links for all of that. So thanks again for checking it out. Just head over to thescenesnobs.com where everything is, and we will